Okay, so we've all been there, right? Scrolling through our feeds and bam, suddenly it's like motivational quote after motivational quote, all about the hustle and the grind.
Yeah, you're bombarded.
Totally. It's like, is that all there is? Is it just work, work, work all the time?
It's definitely a theme. It's interesting you say that, though. Like, is that all?
No.
Because there's this implied promise there, right? But the why kind of gets lost.
Totally. It's like, okay, hustle and grind, but to what end? And that's actually what I found so interesting about the Tim Dillon interview that you shared. He goes into this whole guru phenomenon, especially with guys like Gary Vee and Ty
He's
Lopez.
got this hilarious take on it, right? But also asks some pretty thought-provoking questions.
Right. So in this deep dive, let's unpack Dillon's take on these internet gurus, their tactics, their appeal, and ultimately whether this brand of motivation the real deal is or just a really well-packaged illusion.
I think that's a great way to frame it. So
Hmm.
where do we start with this?
Well, Dillon starts by talking about success really broadly, and he makes this point that to stand out, whether in politics or in comedy, it often comes down to being different. And he uses some interesting examples like Trump, Obama, even Louis C.K.
Wildly different figures.
Totally. But what do they all have in common?
They disrupted their respective fields. They understood how to break the mold, how to capture people's attention.
Exactly. So how does that idea of being different apply to these gurus like Gary Vee and Ty Lopez?
Well, that's what's interesting. Dillon seems to think they've adopted that strategy,
Yeah.
but without the depth. He calls them funny, which is classic Dillon, right?
Hmm.
But you can sense this critique, like their message is a little hollow. He even compares them to Trump at one point.
Yeah.
Like they've tapped into a similar vein of personality, even if their fields are totally different.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're already seeing this theme of disruption, even a comparison to some pretty major figures. But you mentioned the word hollow. What is it about their message specifically that Dillon finds lacking?
It seems like he takes issue with this. Their relentless focus on content creation and hustle, without a corresponding emphasis on value or expertise.
It's almost like the doing overshadows the what and the why.
But exactly.
It's giving means over meaning almost. Like, okay, yeah, I'm hustling, but what's the point? What am I building towards?
Exactly. And this is where we get to one of Dillon's most, I think, pointed critiques.
Yeah.
This idea of Gary Vee's famous quote, ideas are blank. I always found that interesting.
Yeah, I know that quote. It's everywhere.
And Dillon sees that as indicative of a larger issue, which is this downplaying of valuable ideas.
I've always had this weird love-hate relationship with that quote, because on the one hand, execution does matter, but without a solid idea as the foundation, what are you even building?
That's such a good point. It's like saying a house is just bricks and mortar. The architectural plans don't matter.
Right. Imagine this. Gary Vee is the contractor. Super high energy, he's on the move, telling you to hustle, 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 build, build, build. But when it comes to the actual blueprints, the plan for this house, he's kind of vague. So you end up with this impressive structure maybe, but is it actually functional? Does it meet your needs?
That's actually a brilliant way to put it.
Yeah.
Because Dillon is basically arguing that these gurus, they're so focused on the building, the content creation, the self-promotion,
Yeah.
that they're glossing over the foundational elements.
Yeah. It's like, are they building a skyscraper or are they just piling up bricks with no real plan?
Right. And that's where that feeling of hollowness comes in.
It is.
Uh,
So what's the real motivation here? Because if it's not about promoting genuine value, then what is it about?
that's the question, isn't it? That's where things get interesting.
Yeah, it does feel like there's a deeper layer to this, like a strategy beyond just wanting to inspire the masses. So what is it? What's the end game here, according to Dillon?
Well, he suggests that these gurus are playing a much longer game. And it's actually pretty savvy when you think about it. He believes they're leveraging this massive, largely Gen Z following, not just for followers, but for influence.
Okay, so we're not just talking about building a fan base, but building leverage. But influence over who? What's the target?
He argues they're targeting big brands, corporations. It's like they've cracked the code of how to package and monetize this message of hustle and grind and sell it to the highest bidder.
So it's less about actually guiding young people toward financial freedom and more about attracting these corporate sponsorships that align with this whole hustle-driven brand they've built.
That's the picture Dillon paints. He even calls it a carefully curated mirage of success.
Which is an interesting choice of words.
Very deliberate. He's implying it's not entirely genuine, that it's more about projecting a certain image than embodying it.
And this is where that story that Dillon tells about visiting Ty Lopez's mansion comes in. Right. Talk about a carefully constructed image. What did you make of that whole anecdote? Was it just for comedic effect, or was he making a larger point?
I think that story was strategically deployed. Remember, Dylan's a comedian, so he's going to use humor to make his point.
Yeah.
But it's in that anecdote where he's describing this lavish party, even attending an Elton John concert with Ty Lopez, that the mirage becomes almost tangible.
It's like even their personal lives are part of the product, which is pretty genius from a marketing standpoint, I guess, but also a little calculated. Where does the persona end and the real person begin?
Exactly. And that's kind of the question that Dylan is posing, I think. Is this constant hustle, this carefully curated image of success, is it attainable? Is it even desirable?
And to your point about Gen Z earlier, I have to imagine this whole manufactured success thing is especially appealing to a generation that's grown up online where everything is filtered and curated.
Absolutely. They've grown up with social media influencers, this constant stream of perfectly curated lives. It's no wonder those lines between what's real and what's staged, what's aspirational and what's manufactured, they might feel kind of blurred.
Yeah, they're almost primed to buy into this image, it seems like.
Right.
Okay, so we're seeing how this all ties together, this focus on hustle, this carefully constructed image, the appeal to a generation used to a certain online landscape. But Dylan's critique begs the question, if it's all a mirage, why is it so effective? Why do these gurus resonate with such a large audience?
That's the million-dollar question. I think there are a few factors at play here. One is this very human desire for quick success, especially in a world where it seems like everyone online is achieving fame and fortune overnight.
Oh, absolutely. It's like social media is just a highlight reel of everyone else's best moments, so it makes it feel like you're the only one not winning.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And when you couple that with the very real economic anxieties of our time, the rising cost of living, student loan debt, a job market that seems to be changing by the day, it's no wonder people are looking for alternative paths to success, to financial security.
Yeah, they're looking for shortcuts, looking for someone to tell them the secrets to making it big, and these gurus are stepping in to fill that void.
Exactly. And they're doing it with charisma, with confidence, with a message that's tailored to resonate with those anxieties. They're selling a dream, a lifestyle. And that's a powerful motivator for a lot of people.
It's not just about the message itself, but how it's packaged and delivered.
Right.
These gurus are masters of branding, of storytelling, of tapping into what makes people tick.
They understand that in the age of information overload, attention is currency. And they figured out how to capture it and how to monetize it.
So how do we reconcile Dylan's pretty harsh critique with the undeniable appeal of these gurus? Is it possible their message has some value even if it's ultimately designed to benefit them? Or is it all just smoke and mirrors?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, I think. Because Dylan poses this question. What if we stripped away all the distractions? The phones, the content creation, the image. What are these gurus actually offering beyond the surface level?
He's challenging us to look beyond the facade and separate the substance from the spectacle. But is there anything there once you strip it all away?
That's a really good question.
It is, isn't it?
Because you have this undeniable appeal, this promise of a different path,
Yeah.
and it resonates.
Yeah, and you can't discount. There are some things these gurus preach that hold water.
Like hard work.
Totally. Putting yourself out there.
Right.
Those are valuable things, but it gets muddled when it's wrapped up in this hustle at all costs mentality.
Yeah, like your personal brand above all else.
Exactly.
So it's not about like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but maybe we need to learn to differentiate a little bit better.
I think that's the key. Because Dylan's not saying these gurus are evil or their advice is worthless.
Right, it's more nuanced. It's about engaging with it critically. Asking yourself, what's the motivation here?
Yeah.
Does this definition of success actually line up with mine?
Is this even what I want?
Right.
Yeah.
And going back to what we were talking about, with these gurus being products in a way,
Yeah.
it makes you think about the system they exist in.
What do you mean?
Well, if these gurus are selling a product, this idea of hustle, of manufactured success, who are the consumers?
Well, it's got to be those young people hungry for a different path, but then also corporations, right?
Exactly, eager to tap into that market. So the gurus are almost like this bridge between those two worlds.
And they're profiting from both sides.
Exactly.
Which takes us back to Dylan's point about critical thinking.
Especially today, when everyone from influencers to algorithms is vying for your attention.
It's true.
It's more important than ever to question the messages coming at you.
Absolutely. Like, who benefits from me believing this?
What are they selling, and what am I actually buying into? And maybe, just maybe, if we all got a little better at asking those questions, the allure of this whole mirage might start to fade a little bit.
And then what happens? What does that world look like?
Well, maybe then we can start focusing on building a future that's based on genuine value and not just these carefully curated Instagram feeds.
I love that. Okay, so to leave our listeners with something to think about, Dylan suggests that these gurus are essentially playing a role in a much larger system. So if we accept that, does it change how we view their content, their motivations, even their success? What does that say about the whole information ecosystem we're navigating today?
It's a lot to unpack.
It is a
Yeah.
lot to think about. And on that note, that's it for this deep dive.
Until next time.